Greetings and welcome to IT SPARCast's Deep Dive. I'm your host, John Barger.
I'm your host, Lou Schmidt. Let's dig deeper.
IT SPARCast Deep Dive is a venture into topics that we feel are important with insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years of experience working in IT or for IT vendors. Today, we're going to be talking about remote work. And this is the first of a long series that we expect to go many episodes. We may take breaks in between to talk about other topics, but we want to talk about remote work and how IT can support a better experience and better outcomes for both the employee and the company. Lou, do you want to give us a little background about what we're doing today?
Absolutely. So the critical thing right now is that we are very passionate about this function, and we want to explain why you should care about remote work, why we care about remote work, and what is the data out there showing about it. So the first part of this series is going to be, why bother, right? We all have a lot of stuff to do. Is this really that important? We think it is. So that's what we're going to dive into.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, starting point there, Lou. And I kind of see this almost as a crusade. And I get really tense when I see these large companies make these initiatives of 5-day-a-week mandatory return to office. And we're going to talk more about that. But I've, tagged Andy Jassy and I've tagged others. I made comments on LinkedIn and X and other places about this. And I'm not just doing it for the heck of it. I truly believe, and Lou truly believes, that forcing 5-day-a-week work from the office is a mistake. It's going to drive people out. It's going to drive the wrong people out. And it is a sign of micromanagement. It's a form of micromanagement, and nobody likes to be micromanaged.
Agreed.
We're talking about this right now at a very high level, and we're giving you the theory of why.
Yes.
We are going to get deeper into IT and its role as this series progresses, but we feel that it's really important to start with the why so that we put that framework around it. Because if we don't agree, or if you don't agree on the why, then the rest of this is going to be useless for you.
It's a waste of time for you to watch this if you don't agree with this. And if you don't, we'd really like to know about it. We'd like
Absolutely.
to know your reasons. So why don't we go ahead and go into some of these topics right now?
Yeah, so let's start with the first and about why we care about remote work. So why don't you start, Lou?
Absolutely. I think the key thing, the why we care, this is the big we. Those of us who are in the IT forces, folks who are watching this that may be managing a remote workforce, or somebody who is remote that is being managed. These are all, even if you're not totally into IT, you're going to get some useful stuff out of this. So why we should all care about remote work is IT, first of all. We focus mostly on IT here. We are crucial to enabling this. It cannot be done. The technical framework for this to work flows through IT. You can set this up yourself if you're really sneaky, as we have right here. John and I are not located in the same state, although we have a similar state of mind. But you are going to be required to get this stuff to go. But why would why do we want this? Remote work enhances productivity. We've seen that. Flexibility enhances employee satisfaction. It increases the talent pool for companies. Now you're not locked into your geographical area. You can go after the best people no matter where they are. And flexibility can save everyone a whole lot of money.
Yeah, across the board. We've talked about that in previous episodes. If you're on YouTube, you'll see a link above Lou's head. But if you're on the audio podcast, you'll see a link in the show notes. The money savings is huge, and it's across the board. Commuting is expensive, whether you're driving or taking the train or whatever else it is, unless you work, 2 miles away from your office. the cost can be prohibitive.
I know somebody who used to do that.
So my last gig, I worked 2 miles from the office, but most of my team didn't work in that office. So I would go in and just, when I wanted to socialize and for collaborative purposes. And again, we're not saying that you never need to be together and you never need to be in the office. What we're saying is a 5-day-a-week mandate return to office is short-sighted.
It's just not great.
Right.
Now, the next thing is, why do we, John and I, care about this? And the real thing is, both of us have been remote employees and managers to each other.
And I'll be honest, if this was 20 years ago, we would not be making this argument. But technology has caught up. And 15 years ago, I was managing remote employees. I had a widely dispersed group of sales engineers that were all over the world. And at the time, I was using GoToMeeting. I also use GoToTraining as the tool, the predecessor to things like Zoom and such. And it was a great tool. And I would have video meetings with my team and with my individuals on a regular basis. And it really made us feel like we were there. You all know that. That's not new information. But these tools have been around for a while. And we know that this can be done.
It can be done. I have one manager who actually had team meetings on Xbox. They would jump into Call of Duty. They would play Call of Duty while they were talking about the weekly thing. Get creative. This stuff actually works really well. So, a point that we both want to emphasize, technology is advanced to the point where it is not only feasible to do this, but desirable, right? We're going to go really deep into why this is. We have both seen how it can positively impact an organization, but we've also seen the challenges. And he and I have a great deal of experience in this. We both manage worldwide teams. And so we've gone across time zones and cultures and everything. We'd like to give you what we learned, the knowledge we have on this. We think it's important to get it out there. Making your employee's life less fulfilling by putting them in a commute, care cost for dependents. I'm in an elder care situation right now. It's a challenge. I can manage it if I do it this way. But it is definitely tough. There's meal costs if you commute into work. You got to buy food. And the biggest thing of all is the time lost. Right? You can't get that time back.
Yeah, 100%. There are other benefits. There's health benefits. People can have more time for being able to work out. I mean, we know people that are commuting 1 to 2 hours each way. You cut 2 to 4 hours out of your life. That's time away from your family. That's time away from your own fun pursuits. It's time away from work. It's time away from working out and being healthy and making healthy choices. And it's time away from making mental health choices that you might do otherwise.
Absolutely. It's not all remote, right? Remote work, even if somebody is in another time zone, we still would bring them in periodically. We tried for once a quarter to get everybody together. It's a very human thing to want to have a meal together. We found the team building activities, which didn't have to be super structured, were really, really great for that. Another observation that I think we both had, and we'll talk about a lot more, is remote work looks way different if you're sitting in a corner office than if you're sitting in a fabric box. And I've certainly seen this. I've talked, and I'll give you some examples in a moment, but if you are a C-suite executive that has people come to you, they all come to you. You don't necessarily have the perspective of what it takes for the day-to-day success of your employees. You're not having the same experience. So you really need to listen. And we have a great case example for this. There's one more thing. We talk about the technology. 20 years ago, I was witness to the birth of a new technology, a very compelling technology. Before telepresence came out, it was just video conferencing. When I was at Cisco when they launched telepresence, I know the engineers who came up with it. I was the one who, with my team, worked out how to deploy it successfully to multiple trade shows and how to outsource it. So I know a lot about this stuff. One thing I do know is I saw a CEO drag his CTO towards a telepresence room when we showed it the first time in the United States. When we showed it for the very first time ever in public, which is at Telecom Asia, I believe it was 2004, 2005, we had to post guards around the rooms because everybody wanted to see this thing. That experience to me crystallized in my mind what was possible. Now, there's been a whole bunch of time that's gone through, a bunch of missteps made by various people. It's really expensive. It was $300,000 a room. I don't think there's any reason why we cannot reproduce that experience today for far less money. And we are going to dive into the hardware and software that will allow you to do that. John, do you have any stories about stuff you've seen in the technology side that just sort of clicked this thing for you?
Well, yeah. So I have one that matches what you were saying. So in 2000, I was a co-founder of a startup that got acquired by EMC. And once the day the acquisition finalized, the IT team came in. We kept our offices. They actually built out new offices next door for us, but we stayed in the old factory style offices that a typical startup had for the first few months. And they replaced all of our laptops. They all of our monitors if we needed them. They gave us everything that we needed, and they brought in 2 big screen televisions for the time. Almost every TV in my house here is bigger than what they brought in, but at the time they seemed massive. Old tube monitors and telepresence cameras that had the directional. They would pan towards the speaking voice. This was in 2000, and at that point, I knew that you could do remote work or collaborative efforts, and you could do it in small teams. So it was proof to me, and I became a big fan of video conferencing at that point. And when I was able to get software on my laptop that used at that point, an external camera and then the camera in the laptop to collaborate with my team, I jumped on it. So I was, like I said, an early adopter of that software through GoToMeeting and then eventually GoToTraining. I was delivering remote training through GoToTraining and having people get certified on the products of that company through remote work back in 15 years ago.
Yeah, I literally saw customers try to shake hands through telepresence screens. There's an art to making this thing disappear. And really the art is partially technology, but a lot of it's layout and lighting. And we're going to cover it. We're going to talk about that later.
Some of the technology that we just mentioned today is table stakes. Yes. Kids have Zoom calls or FaceTime with their grandparents. It's well integrated. So we know that. But one of the things we should get back to, I think, is what is the driver behind companies like Amazon and so many others pushing for the 5-day return to office mandate? And I think, and the reason that really, really upsets me is it's 2 things. One is it is a form of micromanagement. Andy Jassy's claiming that the remote workers are not as efficient and they're not getting as much done as they would be if they were in the office. Bull.
Well, I have some insight into that. I had a discussion with a high-level employee that just retired. Somebody that both John and I know quite well and have worked with, a really, really smart dude. And he pointed out to me, he said, if you go to Amazon, you can't even be effective for the first year. He said, you don't know enough about how things get done for you to be effective. Now,
this guy's brilliant, by the way. He is
one of the smartest dudes I know.
Yeah.
Really, really great. And we still talk about all sorts of stuff. The challenge is, I'm gonna side with this guy's bullshit comment. If you can't virtualize your culture, you've got a cultural problem.
100%.
right? You've got a problem. If you can't look at especially the company that basically pioneered virtualizing your infrastructure, they can't virtualize their culture. They can't see the value in that.
It does require a mental change for the management. And what I think is going on at Amazon is that the top level management, the VPs and the C-suite, are actually having trouble managing the managers. And that's where the problem is, because a good frontline manager knows what their team is doing, whether they're in the office or not. You have to measure based on output, not on hours in a seat. Because I tell you what, I can show up in the office and not get anything done. Or I can work from home and get a lot done on maybe an off schedule. I'm there for the meetings I need to attend. And then maybe I pick up my kid at school and take him to get an ice cream because he had a bad day, and then come back and finish up things at 8 or 9 o'clock. There's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact,
I've learned personally, sometimes walking away.
Oh, yeah.
Walk away from a problem, and then it sits in the back of your head. But it's not just Amazon. But one of the things the Washington Post was saying to bring people back to their offices, like, well, we want to recreate the energy of the newsroom. The problem is the energy of the newsroom that you had before existed before people knew they could work remote. Right. That's the problem. You have to find a new way to do this, because you're never going to step in the same river twice. What do I mean by that? You go down to the shore, you step, the water's changed, you've changed, branches have moved. It simply is never that. Think about that when you think about how things were and how things are. You cannot go back to what you were. Too many people were thrown to the wolves during COVID. Here, go make this work. And then they figured it out. Some did, some didn't. And they had problems with the ones that didn't. And they're like, well, this doesn't work. We want to go back to what we had. Right? We have some insights as to why this happened.
Yeah. And again, we do want to hear from you. Do you agree with what we're saying?
Yeah.
As a leader in your company, whatever your position is, as an IT administrator, as an IT director, as a CIO or CTO, whatever your role is, what is your feeling on this? Send us email at feedback@itsparkcast.com or hit us up at itsparkcast on X and let us know what you feel about this, because I think that this is incredibly important. This is a change that happened, was forced upon us, but then we as a society made it work. We proved it could work. And now micromanagement is trying to drag that away from us. I almost see this, and I don't want to overstate this, but I almost see this as a freedom that is being taken away from us, a right that is being taken away from us. And it's not a right. Working from home is not a right. But once you've tasted it, and once you realize that you can be efficient and you can be more valuable to your work, more valuable to your family, and more valuable and caring for yourself by doing this, you could never get me to accept a job where I had to be in the office full time.
1 out of 3 corporate upper level managers say exactly the same thing. Think of it this way. This meeting that could have been an email, this day that could have been virtual. That's going to be about the 2020s. I'm going to give you an example of something that's going right. And this example just released on Veterans Day in the United States in 2024. And it was a statement from the chief people officer at Pinterest. So we're all familiar with Pinterest. It's a little pinboard. It's a virtual application. Great. Well, that's what Amazon is. That's what your banking is. That's what all sales efforts are. They're all very, very virtualized in how they're delivered. So they basically ran an analysis of that. This was published in Fast Company, by the way. Highly recommend you go and look at this because they have a lot more backing stuff. They introduced a policy they call PinFlex. PinFlex is flexibility first. Now, we had both experienced something similar to it. previous company we worked for also took this approach. And I think it was very, very valuable. I think we've experienced this, so we know it can be done. They say their approach has been key in attracting a diverse pool of talent, both diversity from whatever you want, geographical diversity. They can now go to the places where this talent they're looking for is and hire them. While some leaders insist that remote work is stifling innovation, and we've had like Eric Schmidt, last of Google, go off record and accidentally get captured saying their AI teams were behind because of that. I would posit they're not. They're behind because of their viewpoint. But what Pinterest found is that flexibility is clearly linked to increased productivity, which led directly to business improvement, performance improvement, and external research supports this. Stanford University study found it boost by 13%. Global Workplace Analytics reports 2/3 of employers saw increased productivity with remote worker. There's another one that is 16%. John, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it's well established that employee satisfaction increases their productivity. And a good manager will know when somebody is being productive or not. And you might have people take advantage of that remote work situation. We're not claiming that 100% of people are ethical and hard workers and so forth. But if they're not putting in the work and getting the results that you need, they're going to do the same thing in the office. They're going to be working on their fantasy football team or watching YouTube or doing something else in the office, just like they would be doing at home. So measuring them and motivating them, and if you can't, then remediating them is something that you can do, whether they're in the office or not. I want to go back, though. There's a benefit to the company as well.
Yes.
And there's multiple benefits of the company. You mentioned the diversity of the workforce, both whatever diversity means to you, but definitely from a geographic diversity. If I have to hire somebody in the Silicon Valley area, I'm probably paying them almost twice as much as if they're in Alabama or in Lithuania, or if they're in South America, or if they're somewhere else, or maybe I'm paying them 50% more than if they were in North Carolina or New Hampshire or someplace like that. So there's a savings on the salaries that you're paying people, and you can get this, somebody that might be, thinking a little bit differently and bringing new thoughts, as opposed to a bunch of people that really come from the same pool, differing views of thought and so forth. Then you realize that you're saving money on space.
Can I get into that real quick?
Yeah.
Because this study actually showed it. So Pinterest actually went on record as saying they more than halved their real estate costs. Now, what's very interesting is what they did next. What they did, instead of having their real estate costs and walking away, they invested in world-class offices that improve the creativity and the interaction, collaboration in the community, so that when you came into the office, you were more effective, that you could have customers come in and offer a much better experience because you put that much more effort into those spaces. Upgraded the technology, everything you need to do this better collaboration. We all know, like, it doesn't matter what your company's policy are, you're looking over a sea of empty cubicles. Why can't you re-optimize and do better? That's exactly what Pinterest did, and they saved money anyway.
I think that one of the drivers for the return to office is that a lot of these larger companies, we are seeing it more common amongst the bigger companies like your Amazons, that they own their spaces and they feel that they're losing their investment in those spaces. And I would argue that you got to figure something else out. And I do get that. There is a truth to the fact that you've spent millions, or in some cases, many millions of dollars on your office space. Look at Apple's campus with the big spaceship, circular office.
Which one? They're all over the valley.
Right. But I'm talking about the headquarters that.
I know people who work there and they're not happy because they don't have cubicles. There's no privacy in that space.
Correct. But my point is that they're looking at this big investment and how not to lose that investment. And I get that part, but there are other creative ways you can do that. You can change that space to something else. You can shut down some space somewhere and have people congregate in fewer locations, sell off space, lease it out. There's all kinds of other options. Turn it into a revenue generation and lease out that space, right? There's all kinds of things that can be done.
The challenge is inevitably, and I've been watching this since COVID, commercial real estate prices are going to drop. They're going to drop. The first thing I saw when we started the massive telework and some of the initiatives that we participated in, the first thought I had was, if you're invested in commercial real estate, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because we just proved it wasn't necessary. We've proved it wasn't necessary. So the problem is that what are you giving up to get that warm feeling of filling your fabric boxes, right? Or in this case, no privacy at all. You're giving up employee satisfaction and you are hurting your bottom line. Pinterest followed the data. They looked at the costs. John, you nailed it exactly. We have to look at, managers are a big part of the problem. Training is a huge part of the problem. Training. Nobody was trained when we did this.
And then I just want to bring this back to IT and IT's role here. So, you may at this point be, if you've gotten this far into it and you're wondering like, well, why is an IT focused podcast talking about this? IT is the enabler. Without a smart strategy from IT, work from home will fail. You have to be integral to this. And as a matter of fact, when I was in sales, one of the things I would always talk about was getting IT a seat at the table by making you valuable to the C-suite by saving money in the right places, making money in the right places, and using IT as more than just a cost center. Here's a place where you have an opportunity to show value and actually potentially elevate your career in your company by bringing something to the table that makes everybody more efficient and effectively changes the bottom line for the company. I think that could be really valuable for you. And that's why we're doing this series, is to help your company become a better steward of its employees, get more efficiency out of its employees, and actually grow as a company.
Absolutely. The thing is that all roads to the success of this lead through IT. Even if you want to say, okay, training of managers. John, you made a great point about micromanagement. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. The angst over empty buildings. There's not a lot we can do about that. You're going to have to deal with the angst because you may have made a big jump on a building and now things are different.
Yeah,
that happens. But you're doing yourself a massive disservice as a company if you let that drive your policy. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about specific areas where you're going to look and why they're related to IT. Almost everything we're talking about has to go through IT. Project management has to go through IT. Real-time communications, that's you, right? What's
100%.
the different types of communications we have to think about? You can't just deploy Teams and say you're done. All the companies that do that fail. We're going to take a look at it. How do you make this stuff work? But most of all, we want to help ease that burden for you, if we can, whatever we can do. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching this, where we outline why we really care. We're not getting paid a lot. We're not getting paid to do that.
That's right.
But we think it's important. It's really important. So we're going to get it out there.
It is very important. And that's going to cover this episode. We couldn't do this podcast without listeners like you, and we would love to hear what you think. Again, do you agree with us on our position on return to office? Do you have additional thoughts? Do you have questions about how to make something work? Are there topics you want us to cover specifically around remote work that you are struggling with? Send us email at feedback@itsparkcast.com. That's feedback at itsparkcast.com. or hit us up at IT SPARCcast on X. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. That'll really help this channel grow. Let your friends and colleagues know about this series, especially on remote work, because I think it's important for everybody to hear about this. We're going to be back on Friday with news and opinions from the world of enterprise IT, and join us next Wednesday as we dive deeper into this series on remote work and how IT needs to better support it. Again, we have strong opinions on this. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.